Greetings, fellow quitters, and welcome back to the CMDQ podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Mari Casey.
And I'm John Pelfrey.
So self-employment is a many splendored thing, but if we're honest, it's not necessarily great for social skills. Depending on the kind of work you do, some freelance creatives find themselves spending a lot of time in isolation. And then when we have to reemerge to network, negotiate, or lead a meeting, we can't help but feel a little awkward. So if you've ever lost control of your facial expression or on a Zoom call or had no idea what to do with your hands at a conference, then this episode is for you. We'll try to sort it out, and later we'll get some much needed help from the body language expert and CMDQ alumni, Terry Vaughan. All right, so John, have you ever had an embarrassing Zoom moment?
I don't think so. I don't think I've had an embarrassing Zoom moment. Zoom came along in my 40s, and so I feel like I was like a little more prepared for it. I have a dedicated space. There's not anyone walking around in my background behind me. I always fully dress before a Zoom meeting. You know what I mean? Like, well, I mean, some people are like, oh, I only dress, the top half of me, and then I'm wearing pajamas underneath or whatever. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
that feels weird to me. So I don't recall having an embarrassing one. I mean, the most embarrassing ones for me are probably if I'm demoing a piece of software or something and there's a bug in the software or something doesn't go as planned. That can be a little bit embarrassing, but you can always explain that away as software is software and sometimes things break, and I'll put it on my list and we'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
I've had more embarrassing moments in meetings doing things like that, selling software or training someone on something and being like, I swear this has worked 1,000 times in a row. And then, now, of course, right now you're getting ready to sign this contract and do this thing. And now it breaks. That's just, and usually I try to play it off like that. I try to play it off as like being super honest and really straightforward about it so that I can get a chuckle out of it. And then people go like, yeah, I've been there, whatever. That is much better to me than trying to cover it up or play it off or pretend like it doesn't exist or whatever. Like, you just have to address the elephant in the room immediately. And if you address the elephant in the room immediately and you call it an elephant and you say like, isn't it weird? There's an elephant in here. Then everybody goes like, yeah, that's true. It is weird. It's a little weird. So yeah. I tend to just be like real upfront about it and make light of it. How about you?
I can't think of anything in particularly like embarrassing, like all of those videos where like the guy's got a cat face during the trial, or the kid walks in the background, or like the wife's bras on the doorknob, like nothing like that. I've definitely had moments where it's just like awkward. Usually it has to do with technical difficulties where I'm like presenting and I'm just like full conversation mode and I'm talking and like 3 minutes go by and I realize that everybody's frozen, or so, I'm like, how long have I been talking to myself? That's always a bummer when something like that happens and you're kind of like, you're really geared up to have a big meeting and then technical difficulties happen, or, all of a sudden, like I had this happen yesterday, like all of a sudden, like the Google Fiber goes out in your neighborhood because somebody cuts it. There's beyond your control stuff. Yep. Like that's more awkward because you feel bad that now you have to start over again, or you have to like redo the meeting. But nothing that I can think of where it's like, other than maybe a few coughing fits, or like one time I spilled a drink in the middle of the meeting, like on my lap. And I was just like, I have to take a minute because I just spilled, it wasn't hot coffee or anything, but it was just like water. But nothing crazy where it's just like, you can't recover from, right?
Yeah. I think people are pretty lenient on the technical difficulties issue. Your internet gets cut or for some reason it goes out or what. I've definitely had that happen a lot because for years, the internet at my house was very intermittent and pretty terrible.
Yep.
But yeah, I think people are pretty okay with that. It's just, that's daily life in 2025. Everyone's breaks at the point.
Right.
I mean, just recently, half of the internet went down when AWS went down. So, beyond our control, people are okay with that. Yeah. All right. So as communication has gone more digital, has nuance gotten harder to convey to you?
I think, talking about sending wrong signals, I do feel like as a whole world of people now online, we've gotten better about it. I remember when COVID happened, everybody was virtual. We've been virtual forever. Yeah. But when COVID first happened, people didn't know how to act. Like they didn't know how to use their faces because some people just naturally don't emote, when they're having conversation. I do like talk with your hands and so I felt like when people weren't experienced being virtual, it was a lot of like people sitting like they were, just being interrogated. which was super hard to get any kind of energy from a meeting from. But I do feel like it's gotten better in the last 5 years of people of like, okay, this is the new normal. Like I'm just talking to you like you're in the same room.
Yeah.
So I think we've gotten past that.
Yeah, I think so too. At first, it was very hard to read people's sort of body language or their mannerisms. The most difficult thing is if there's a bunch of people on a call, it's not the same as being in a room where you can sort of feel the energy of the room. I think that's the part that I don't know if you can ever fix that. There is a sense and a feeling and an energy that you can sort of connect with when everybody's together, that it's really hard to get that online. It's also hard if you've got 20 different blocks that you're looking at to catch the one confused person and their confused expression.
Yeah.
It's much easier to do that in a room where you're actually in there because it comes along with other sounds or movements or whatever. And if people have their mics muted and you're just trying to look at those things can be difficult, I think. But we are all getting more used to it, more comfortable with it. I feel like there are fewer people like turning off their cameras and muting their microphone and they're just like sitting there lurking, and everybody has sort of learned to participate more. And so that's good. That's been
agreed.
Yeah. So unlike traditional office settings, freelancers rarely get to see their clients' and colleagues' mannerisms. And this is true. This is like a really good sort of point and question that Jenna came up for us. When you work in an office with people, you get used to how they move, how they talk, what their specific tell is for if they're frustrated or they don't understand something or they want to speak or speak up in a meeting. You get used to that and you can get a feel for like, oh, this person is this way and this person is this way. And this is, so now that we all a lot of us work remotely, do you feel like there's something lost there in terms of the communication side that we really don't actually know our coworkers in the same way at all?
Yeah. We know the video version of them. Well, it's interesting too, because it's like a lot of times we don't know, we've not met a person we've been working with for years.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people, I'm like, make sure the things that are visual representations of you in the world are current and realistic. So like, don't make your LinkedIn profile what you look like when you were 29. Like if you're 40 something, like make it look like you, make it feel like you. Include video. Like if you feel like you can include video in LinkedIn or in places where, like if you're sending an email, like include things that make people understand you more as a person, as opposed to like a video digital presence. I think that's super helpful. But it's like, if you're, even when you go and meet someone in person, like, oh, you're taller, or you're shorter than I thought you would be. But a lot of times how we interact with people is based on how we read them like in the real world. So it's like when you're thinking about how you're presenting yourself in a virtual world, you have to think through like, how could I make myself be as real as possible? Because it is helpful. It's like you get a lot more empathy, towards somebody when you're in a space with them.
Yep.
That's why I think there's all this backlash about CEOs who are like firing their entire office virtually. It's like, it's hard to have empathy when you're not in someone's space or you don't understand who they are as a person. So it's like, as you're adding clients, as you're interacting with clients, and as you're interacting with freelancers, finding ways to build that like humanity is I think is super, super important, because then it's like, it's easier to be frustrated with somebody who you don't know outside of a digital screenshot, versus like, oh, I know John, I've interacted with him, whether or not I've seen him face to face personally. We have one-on-one calls. I've seen some of his videos, like all this kind of stuff. I can give him the benefit of the doubt and know like whatever's happening.
Yeah.
So I think you got to really think through how you're creating your presence in the virtual world to make yourself more human.
Yeah. Yeah. And even things like profile pictures on Slack or Discord or something, like make that something that is personal to you, even if it's not your face on there. I mean, like for me, I might put a tennis racket up there or a guitar, like symbolize, so that when you think of me, you think of that other thing too. And you go like, oh, John likes tennis or John plays guitar or whatever. I also think that like, as much as you can, craft your background for Zoom or whatever to show something about you and your personality. So for me, I put my guitars up on the wall. I put my wife's art behind me. And for the most part, whenever I meet someone new, they will comment on one or the other. And that helps us to have something in common to have a discussion about, but also immediately they know, okay, John is into guitar, John is into music. He has original art on his wall. That means he must be into art and culture and other things. And so it does provide them like immediate context as to some things that I'm interested in and that I like. And then we can start talking about things from there. And it makes it easy for me then to say like, oh, do you play an instrument? Or, something like that. to kick off a conversation. So if as much as you can, like I understand that people want a sterile background or they want something that looks professional, quote unquote, or whatever, but you should definitely throw in something about yourself in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's non-offensive, of course, and it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, all of those caveats and everything, but just something that like says like, hey, this is what I like to do when I'm not working.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that drives me crazy is if I get on a call with somebody and they have a whiteboard behind them and they have a bunch of to-dos or notes from whatever. I'm like, okay, I get it. You're very businessy. You're very, into your work and your identity. I understand that, but that's not everything. Like, just show me, just like in your cubicle, you used to have a photo of your kids to the side and you used to have a poster of your favorite sports team and whatever, like do a little bit of that so that we know who you are. That's just,
and I think that the world of like virtual calls and stuff is a little less overly professional. I mean, it still can be professional, but it doesn't feel as authentic if I'm like, I'm at my house or I'm in my kitchen or whatever, and I'm trying to be like,
Right.
CNN over here. It doesn't feel as authentic. I think one of the things that we've talked to Terry about for a while is like when you're entering into a conversation, how to disarm the conversation so it feels easy. And I think one of the mistakes that people made early on with virtual working and virtual relationships is like they would come at it like it was it's like a news conference, and it's like immediately like, and we're going to business, as opposed to like an icebreaker, a quick 5-minute conversation that rolls into it. And that's where I think it's like, that feels super impersonal, because you never walk into a meeting, even when you're face to face, and everyone just sits down and starts going. You're like, I'll take some coffee. Like, how are you doing? I'll see you at the happy hour. So you have to recreate that virtually for it to feel natural when you're walking into those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're the one running the meeting, make sure you have an icebreaker, make sure that you give people time to chit chat, all of that. It is very helpful. It creates and builds camaraderie that you're not going to get around the water cooler because there's not a water cooler. Or in some cases, if you work in the agency world, there's not a bar in your, in your office space. How do we handle this with like text-based stuff like Slack, Discord, email? Do you feel like GIFs are appropriate? Any of those things, emojis?
Yeah.
How do we handle all that stuff and not come off passive aggressive or like out of touch maybe? I mean, there's this weird thing where my son feels like if I put a period at the end of a text message that I'm being very sort of like harsh, I guess, or whatever. Like
punctuation means aggression.
Yeah, punctuation means aggression. I'm like, no. I was just taught to put a period at the end of a sentence. And so I do that all the time in everything that I do because I talk and speak and write in full sentences. I'm old. I don't know what to tell you.
He is grammar.
Yeah.
It's weird. No, I think that's, me, like I love a GIF. Like that makes me happy. And I think it also depends on what kind of business you want to run and what kind of relationship you're building. Like you should know who your audience is. So if you're interacting with the CEO of a bank or something, maybe you shouldn't be sending, smiley face emojis and like funny things like that. Maybe that's not the right tone. So I think you just need to be aware of who your audience is. And I also think it's like, don't be inauthentic. Like if you're somebody that always sides with a smiley face, and some people are like, you can't do that. That shows like you're unprofessional or you're too feminine or whatever. I mean, that's their opinion. I think you need to be authentic to what you feel comfortable with, because like your emails and your text messages should feel like they're coming from you, not from a bot. So especially with how we're utilizing AI to rewrite some of our things, it's like you don't want to like completely remove all personality from your text correspondence. So like if you feel comfortable putting in y'all instead of you all, like if you want to add an emoji at the end of it and it feels appropriate and you would do it naturally, then like go ahead and include it. I think where we fall short is when we make our, it's like two extremes. We make our correspondence, like text and emails, so out there, so many things. And so, we're not adding punctuation and we're adding slang, and that doesn't feel professional, or we're so sterile that it feels like it was written by a robot. So it's like, you got to live kind of in the middle.
Sure. And like you said, know your audience, I think is important too. If we're chit-chatting back and forth on Discord, that audience is very sort of informal. We're working and chatting, and I don't feel like I have to explain every little thing. But at the same time, if I'm writing an email to a client and I want to appear like I'm, together and I have all the answers and all that, then obviously I'm not going to write the same way. So just be aware.
Yeah.
And know your audience is probably like the key thing there. But anytime you're writing, I think it's important to write in a tone of voice that is, mildly professional, but also in your own voice, just the way that you would speak. You can take out the ums and uhs and everything, but write it as if it's you and you're talking and speaking. That to me helps for people to get to know me, because then when they speak to me in person and they put a face with a name and then they hear my voice, they can go like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds just like your email or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've totally met people who, when I meet them face to face, like I'm like, who are you? And they're like, oh, we've been emailing back and forth for the last couple of months, and they're hilarious on email or like super snappy. And then you meet face to face and it's just like quiet,
Dry.
deadpan, It is. It's very jarring because you're like, I feel like I'm talking to two totally different people. So you have to make sure that it feels, like you said, transferable. Like I'm the same I am in email as I am in person. And I think, going from virtual, from where you're working and living 75% virtually to then going to a conference, understanding that you're going to have to bring energy out in a different way when you're face to face with somebody versus when you're having a Zoom call with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you transition from, if you meet someone online first, whether it's no matter what the medium is, and then you meet them in real life, you do need to bring some consistency. But you also, I think sometimes people get a little uncomfortable or unsettled when they meet people in person for the first time. Little intimidated, maybe is the word. I've been talking to you for a year and now I have to show you who I am or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you just got to be that same old, person. But definitely when you're at a conference, when you're anytime you're in a room with a bunch of people and you're mingling and chatting, and we've had these conversations with Margaret McNabb and other people about how to feel and talk. You do need to turn the dial up on your personality a little bit. You don't want it to be sort of chill and relaxed too much. You want to turn the dial up maybe two or three points there to get more emotive and be a little more memorable.
Yep.
Too, I think that's a lot of people that have become more shy the more that they've worked at home too. We're forced to be less in the world and out and interacting with people. And I know definitely in the last year or so, last 2 years, I've made a more conscious effort to get back out and to do things more. But there for a stretch for a couple of years, I became very introverted and very hermit-y. I became...
It's definitely a muscle you need to keep working on. It's a muscle that if you don't exercise it, it atrophies a little bit, the face-to-face muscle.
Yeah, the face-to-face muscle. And it's weird because, I worked retail for years. I owned a retail business. I used to go out in the world and do things. And my job was basically to talk to strangers all the time. And it became hard even for me to sort of get that muscle to start working again. I had to kind of force it. But for most of my life, I was always out in front of people talking all the time. So
yeah,
weird, but it's like riding a bike. You can get back on there and it's fine. All right. So up next, we have Terry Vaughan. Terry has been on the podcast. Yeah. He has been on the podcast or at least one other time before. He is a former British Marines commando, and he's now sort of turned his business and world into being a body language expert and also helping people to recognize dangerous situations. So he has a program that he's developed called DIRT, Dangerous Individual Recognition Training, that helps people sort of detect unsafe situations that you might be in the world. But his real skill, the thing that I've learned so much from him about, is his sort of understanding of people's body language and how to project yourself into the world in a way that you want people to see you. He helped the two of us with a speech where we were both talking back and forth and sharing the mic essentially back and forth. And it was so interesting and very uncomfortable to work with Terry in that situation. But
in a good way, right?
Yeah. But I'm really thankful that I had that opportunity for someone with his knowledge and his skills and expertise to be able to sit there and watch me talk and to be like, John, your hands are in too close. When you're talking in a room, they need to be out and they need to be big. But now that we're in this Zoom space, they can come in a little bit more. And, he helped me to use my hands a little bit more, to get out there, to smile, to be a little bigger, and to turn the dial up on my personality a little bit more. Terry has been just a really great mentor and help and friend as we've kind of come along this journey with the podcast and with other public speaking things. So we're going to turn this now over to a little bit of our conversation with Terry, and we're going to talk about some of those things that we learned, some really basic questions about body language and how to read people's body language and how you can get the most out of your own body language. All right. So warm-up question. In general, Do you think people find you approachable as a person? And how do you know that they find you approachable?
Honestly, it depends on my mood and whether I want to be approached. And I think a lot of body language comes down to exactly that. What's your intent? What's your emotion in the moment? What's the context? What's the environment? Do you want to be approachable? I'm doing a lot of conferences. It's in my best interests to be approachable. So what does that mean? It means giving someone that might make eye contact with me as they approach warm signals that, yes, I am open to communicate, please approach. Now, if I'm not working at some event, I'm there just as an observer, or perhaps I'm going to a conference to learn for myself, well, I probably will not be anywhere near as warm and fuzzy because I like to stand at the back of the room and observe everybody else. And so the different contexts call for different things, but I certainly think that when it comes to being approachable, oftentimes it takes intention. Okay, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to feel like they can approach and communicate. So I'm going to give off the appropriate signals.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think
Maybe that's my problem. I got to stop giving off those approachable signals.
But that's an interesting point. In most cases, women, because they tend to be more social in general, and obviously all we can do here is talk in generalities because there are always exceptions, they tend to be a little bit more warm and fuzzy, and thus give the impression that they are open to communicate. So yes, if you are in a situation where that is the last thing you want, if you shut it down and you don't animate as much with the eyes and the face, chances are you will be approached less, generally speaking.
Oh, so that leads us to our next question, which is, as an expert reader of body language, what is your theory on RBF, resting bitch face?
I was just going to clarify.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Clarified.
Yes, that's what I have to put on if I want to be unapproachable.
Yeah. So what's your theory about people who just have like resting bitch face? They look mad all the time, even when they aren't.
Usually that comes down to a lack of self-awareness. They're not introspective enough to have ever asked somebody or be told by someone perhaps that they know, like, and trust what their default expression is. Many of us, when we're focusing intently, tend to put on that face, the resting bitch face. But there are many people who seem, when they're thinking, there's something completely different. They look, maybe some people look confused, or some people look really entertained by it. And it doesn't matter what the topic is, because a baseline behavior is obviously super important. But resting bitch face, to me, is a mistake that people make day in and day out because they haven't asked themselves what face is the best face for this situation, especially in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one. What face is the best face for this situation? To sit and think about that in different places and different times. You've given me homework now. And
you need more than one face. You all need multiple faces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I mean, I know when I'm working, when I'm concentrating and focusing, people always comment on how my eyebrows furrow in, and I have this line on my face from, all the concentration I've done over my life. And I've even had people tell me, like, you need to fix that or correct that, or you're going to have a giant, line on your face or whatever. And I'm like, but that's my thinking face,
Yeah. And that's known as the 11s, those, those lines that end up sitting in there. I think I read somewhere that up until age 20 or something, we get the face our mother gave us. And by the time we're 25 or 30, we get the face we deserve. So you kind of have to think about, what are the emotions? What am I defaulting to in a variety of situations or circumstances? And I'm also a brow furrower, especially if I'm focusing. A lot of people are. It's that intensity of looking at whatever you're looking at, or even listening, within as much intensity as the topic deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And then that furrows that glabella, that the muscles and stuff between the eyebrows that you're knit together. So when you're focusing intently, occasionally ask yourself, what is my face doing? Like, I once had a guy, it's funny, I had a guy at an event, and he sat near the front row, and it didn't seem to matter, because I inject as much humor as possible at my training. And I had put in some jokes, and everybody else was laughing. This guy's face never cracked. And I kept thinking, I've missed this guy. Whatever he needed from me, I'm not delivering. Well, it turned out not only was he like this 2IC, the second in command at that company, but he was also my biggest fan. When he got up at the end, he said, that was amazing. I absolutely loved it. The information was great. This is so actionable. And I'm looking at him going, have you ever asked yourself what your face is doing when you're intently focused? And he had the same kind of deadpan expression. It looked like he was just mad at everything I was saying. And I was like, that is his default focusing expression, and probably something he should work on in his spare time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you imagine like presenting to him as his employee or something, you would feel like a failure all the time. That'd be so hard.
Yeah, it's demoralizing, especially for employees. I got to go approach the boss who constantly looks like he's in a bad mood, or she looks like she's in a bad mood. That's hard work, and it's frightening because you're vulnerable as the employee having to approach someone and talk to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then that kind of brings us to the next question here, which is video. When we're on a Zoom, when we're on a chat like we're on right now, a video chat, how can we put our best foot forward? What are the things that we should be doing? For instance, I'm sort of consciously aware of the fact that my camera is slightly above your head in my view. And when I look into your eyes on the video, I'm not looking into the camera necessarily, because that feels awkward and confusing a little bit. So give us some ideas about what our body language should be like, maybe how we should sit, facial expression, so that we have sort of that warm, calm, approachable, open to discussion sort of perspective. We don't put...
Well, you're already doing a lot of it, which is to utilize the hands as much as is feasible in the confines of the frame with which you're working. But so many people now have gotten used to having to do their meetings on Zoom. And we know that when that person's looking down, they're most likely looking at us rather than looking at the camera. Optimally, we want to look to the camera as much as possible, because that it replicates the eye contact that we naturally seek during any interaction. But we can't do it all the time. And part of the reason is there's no feedback loop. When we're looking at the camera, we're not privy to the expressions of the people we're actually talking to. So it doesn't really matter how hard you try. You're going to default back to looking at the expressions and the eyes of the people you're in the meeting with. So I would say, as much as possible, maintain eye contact with the camera as much as you can. Know you're going to default back to looking at the faces of the people you're communicating with, and that's perfectly natural. We've gotten used to it. When we first started to have to go to Zoom, people didn't even want to look at the camera, let alone the faces of the people. And so that was a little awkward. Now I think most people have gotten used to the concept and the situation where they're having to look between faces and the camera. But using your hands as much as you can, again, we are confined physically. So for a lot of people, this is awkward to have to T-Rex arms, inside this tiny box. Me particularly, I'm used to being on a stage and I'm having to, gesture in such a way as to communicate and signal to the people at the back of the room. Well, that's bloody impossible in this tiny screen. But the more we use our hands and the more we reach towards and out and away from ourselves, and the more we show our palms, the greater the likelihood we're able to still build trust and rapport even through this medium.
Show your
It's definitely like, it's like, I feel like you're in a little Vogue box, or that like voguing where you would think Vogue.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh my.
I do feel like people have gotten a lot better in the last like 5 years, since we all live in the virtual Zoom world now. But I still get people who will come to me and they're like, the camera's over here, but they're like talking sideways.
Yeah, that's bad.
That drives me crazy. And then I'll get people, like, one thing I can't stand about it is like when you're presenting to a Zoom room, and there's just like everyone just sitting there listening to you. There's no like auditory feedback really, because everyone's on mute. I've done that a couple times, and I won't do it anymore if it's just I'm presenting for 15 minutes or something like that. I'm like, if we're going to do that, it's going to be a conversation back and forth, or everybody's mic's on and I can hear you snicker or whatever you're doing over there. Because it felt so awkward. It felt like it was like sitting for the firing squad or something. It was just the weirdest feeling. And it'd be so uncomfortable. I couldn't get on with the presentation. I had to be like, all right, everyone turn your mics on, because this feels really weird. So I feel like some of those things are just, you realize when you don't have a real like person to person interaction, the difference in how you feel comfortable in a meeting room, in a conversation, when you're not getting that like ongoing feedback.
Yeah. And you touched on something with the orientation of the face and the body away, cameras positioned somewhere else, or perhaps it's right in front, but they're using another monitor. when we don't like someone, when we don't trust them, when we're suspicious of them, when we just don't want to interact, we will blade away. So either ventral orientation, the midline of the trunk, or our face will orient away. So when you're dealing with somebody and they have oriented away from the camera, we immediately feel like, and this is legitimate, that they've disconnected and they don't trust us. And we don't now at this point probably trust them. So there's all these variables that start piling on top of one another that people are not aware of. And yet, have you guys heard of something called embodied cognition? Okay, so it's essentially where you replicate a display, a nonverbal display, and then test to see what emotions you feel that display generate. For instance, the next time you're with people in a room, and only do this with somebody you already like, because then you contrast in how you feel will be much more pronounced. But orient your face and your torso slightly away from them, under the pretense that if you like and trust them, you probably were oriented towards them in the first place. Orient slightly away, and then just move your eyes towards them. And then move your head in. You will find yourself, even if it's somebody that you like, you will find the emotion of mistrust, suspicion, dislike created by that manufactured nonverbal display. And it's such a weird to do. Orient the face away, turn the eyes, then move the head in. Can you feel how weird that feels?
Just watching you do it felt a little like weird.
Yes, because we tend to not do something like that with people we know, like, and trust. We do it with people we don't like and we don't trust or we're suspicious of. So somebody who is sitting in front of their camera, working to the side, is telling our brain, our subconscious brain, they don't like us, they don't trust us, and now we don't like them and we don't trust them either.
That's good to know. That's good to know, because a lot of people will be on a client call, like a new client call, like, I'm taking notes, listen, I'm just taking notes, but it's still giving off the impression that I don't trust you and I don't feel comfortable with you, which is like obviously not good on a client call.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And of course, most of the time, people are not sitting there decoding the signals. They're not going through a checklist of, I saw this, I saw that, I saw this. But their subconscious is picking up on absolutely all of it. So they're ending up with the same emotional response, even if they don't know tangibly why they're having that emotional response. And that leads ultimately to the same place where they're not comfortable or they don't trust you or you've broken that connection. And it's hard enough having to do Zoom meetings and create a connection, especially with a new client, or if you're the leader of a team and you're having to communicate with the team. So you want to be doing everything in your power to promote connection, in some cases above and beyond even what you're comfortable with, because it waters down through the lens.
Yeah. I try to remember to like lean forward when I'm making a point, like you would in an actual
and that's great.
Conversation.
Physically leaning in helps. Notice that, for this, I could be sitting back here.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's awful. I never do it. Even for a second, it doesn't feel right. But things like being upright, sitting forward, introducing the hands, these are all positive cues that most of the time will be received well by the other person.
Yeah. So basically, I think what you're saying is, if we were sitting in front of each other at a coffee shop, pretend like we're sitting in front of each other at a coffee shop. We're going to face each other. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to use our hands. We're going to feel natural. We're going to feel like we're in that space all the time. Try to mimic that if possible.
Yeah, mimic it. And, as far as the coffee shop reference, we have a tendency, depending on the physical space between us and the other party, that will dictate how much leaning forward we do. Right? In a physical space, there are new rules. There are the comfort of the other person, the comfort you may feel with this person in this environment. The physical space then becomes a factor as well. But with this, because we are insulated behind our own computer screens and physically, literally removed from one another, we can lean forward quite a bit and not have to worry necessarily, unless we really get up into the lens and then it's like, okay, now people start leaning away from their own computer. Like there's a reasonable amount that you can commit to that forward lean and it's still going to be okay.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right. So switching gears a little bit from being nice and presenting yourself on the camera in sort of a nice, warm, approachable way. What are some situations where we may want to seem tougher or stronger or less approachable? And how do we present that to ourselves, become conscious of it and go like, okay, I'm in tough mode now?
Well, depending on the circumstances. Reduction in animation, reduction in what kind of facial expressions we display, a reduction in movement in general tends to make us look more in control. So let's pretend for a second that I need to talk to you. You are my employee. And there's something I've got to talk to you about because we've had a complaint. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use pauses. I'm going to unanimate my face. There's not going to obviously be any smiling. I'm going to show less hand movement, but when I use my hands, it's going to be measured. I'm in control. My pacing may change a little. It'll slow down below what I would do baseline in a relaxed situation. When we move less, it registers in the other person's brain as confidence and control. And depending on the degree that we take it to, it can also come across as dominant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One thing I noticed that you did too was you kind of like leaned in, but with one shoulder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Versus like all the way forward. So it's kind of like, I got to tell you something. It's a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was not planned. And is also a habit I get into when I'm at my desk, where I kind of lean in. And ironically, blading is a slightly either disengaged or relaxed. So even though there was a conspiratorial sort of undertone to leaning forward with one shoulder, there's also to everything a practical element. This is comfortable. I wanted to showcase a little bit less animation. I also wanted to make sure I had your full attention. And to do that, I'm utilizing the pauses, less hands, less facial expressions.
Yeah.
And then this was me being relaxed while I told you.
You're settling up to a bar and you're like,
Yeah, it could, couldn't it? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think I've had a what I would call like a super difficult conversation via Zoom. That would be really hard. I think that would be really hard. You know, having to like fire somebody or deliver bad information in a Google call or Zoom call. That'd be really tricky because it's like, you know, you kind of have to become two personalities versus like I'm calling you to the office for a meeting and you walk in knowing that it's already a serious situation. Here you're walking into a space where at one point 5 minutes ago it was like, happy to like fun times. How was your weekend? And it's like now we got to make the switch and now this is like the office. Now we're in serious mode. Like that would be really hard to do.
Yeah, and it's a good sign that it would be hard to do because that shows, you know, the requisite desired amount of empathy. And a lot of times people will use this medium as a means to excuse themselves from having to feel too much empathy. Whereas in person, you know, it's a little harder to look, you know, like a cold ass when the person you are literally firing sitting across from you, assuming they haven't done something truly egregious and you just can't wait to get them out the door. There's a measure of, you know, I'm sorry we're having to do this, right? There's an empathy quotient that should go along with it, at least to a point. Whereas this removes some of that. So again, just like being pleasant, if empathy is congruent to the circumstances, then show as much empathy as is professionally relevant or matches the situation.
Well, I guess I've had client conversations that are, I wouldn't say they're like horrible, but it's like, all right, this is going to be a not fun conversation. And what I've tried to do, and I think I heard this from you or somebody at some point, that was like, try to disarm the severity, not the severity, but disarm the uncomfortableness of it by like setting it up, by being like, here's what we're going to discuss, or like high level, this is what we're going in with. So they don't come in being like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. They're like, oh no, just Rhode Island's ending, or it's just a small piece of the world, just to be on Rhode Island. But it's like, you know, it's like, I think a lot of times we go into situations where we don't know what to expect if it's going to be a conflict conversation. I mean, I know I go in thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is the end of it. They hate me. Everything's awful. moving into the van down by the river, it's terrible. And when it ends up just being like, oh, there was a misunderstanding and something small. And so I tried, like, when I go into those conversations that are hard or difficult, it's like, hey, I'm going to send an email or I'm going to set a meeting overview that's like, we're going to discuss how the scope of work, we're out of scope of work and what we can do to fix it going forward next time. And then we'll get into the conversation versus like walking into where everyone's kind of guns blazing, ready to attack. And I found, because I've done both, and I found that the other one is not as great. So I do feel like it's when you're walking into the Zoom room, which can be the happy room or the sad room or the conflict room at the same time, like setting that table first helps to, at least everyone knows what they're walking into, what kind of room they're walking into.
Well, I think as humans, for the most part, we're all programmed to default to worst case scenarios, right? To go to the worst situation. We think the worst must be coming, but it's a survival mechanism, so it's natural. So qualifying the sort of what you're about to talk about or front loading it with sort of that 5,000 foot view, I think is smart. It's a good way to take out the worst of their fears potentially and introduce, hey, this is not going to be as bad as you think. And rolling from there. But everyone's default setting tends to be worst case situation. And then
mine is for sure.
Yes.
So then this leads us straight into, this is really great. We're going straight through our list of questions and we're leading one right into another and you don't even know what we're doing. This next one is about practicing. How do we practice this? How can we get better at these body language sort of interactions? Do you practice it in a mirror? Like, do you just like get a partner and work with it that way? Should Mari and I sit down on Zoom and role play this out so that we get better at this? How do we do it?
I think you probably do all of the above.
Yeah.
You do role play, you do in front of the mirror. You ask for legitimate, honest feedback from people who know you best. You could start with something simple. When you first met me, was I an open book? Or did you have a hard time reading me and understanding, what was going on inside my head? That'll tell you a lot. There are many people who keep their cards close to their chest. They're not emotionally outgoing, so they're not revealing as much as they think, or perhaps have trained themselves, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, to not reveal much. And so you need to know yourself. You got to know where you're starting from first. If you go and you ask the people you trust, am I an open book? And they're like, dude, I can see you from a mile away, exactly what's going on in your head, which way the wind's blowing from, your mood, your temperament. Well, you may be one of those individuals that actually needs to tone it down some, to give away less, or to be less sort of less peaks, less valleys. You want to sort of modulate a little bit. If you're a closed book, if you're someone that doesn't give away very much from what's shown on your face, you might need to begin to animate a little more, try to give a little bit more of yourself, and you'll need to implement whatever changes, depending on you and your baseline, slowly and over time. Because if you go whole hog from the very beginning, you go from someone with a poker face to suddenly rah-rah cheerleader level enthusiasm, people are going to be like, the guy or the girl, they're on crack. I don't know what they're taking, but it's right. It's gone completely the opposite way. The pendulum has swung. So you want to implement them sort of over time, implement the changes, but practice is a great way of doing that. You can video record yourself on a Zoom without anyone else being there, present your information, and then honestly assess. It's when you do video, I'll add a word of caution to this. When we record ourselves and then see ourselves played back, the tendency is to hate what we see and to hate what we hear because we are not seeing the face that we know. So it looks like we're looking at someone who's impersonating us. We're hearing our voice as it really is versus how we hear it, which is the two forms of audible signal. We get the reverberation inside the ear, and we get the sound that leaves our mouth and comes back to our ear. That gives us a specific tonality. That's what we know of ourselves when we talk. When we're watching video of us talking, we're only hearing one sound and it sounds different. Again, it's like we're listening to an imposter or watching an imposter. So you have to go into any video that you record open-minded and not just looking to hate on yourself. Look at it critically and assess and think, what could I do better? But try to get past that first 10 or 15 seconds of watching yourself on video where you just hate life. You hate you hate everything you said, you hate how you said it, you hate the way you looked. I mean, there's just so much to dislike when you're watching yourself back on video.
Yeah.
I do feel like John and I was talking about this today, but I do feel like the best way to get comfortable with yourself on video is to just do it over and over. Like just keep recording yourself and listening to yourself, because you get better and you get more comfortable with hearing yourself. Because you're like, oh, okay, that's just me on video. Like I sound like a 12-year-old girl. Right now I sound like a 6-pack-a-day smoker, but typically I sound like a 12-year-old on a 6-pack-a-day smoker. But I think it's like the more you do that over and over again, the better you feel about how you're doing it. And then you can also pick up on what you're doing wrong if you're talking too fast. But I think it's really smart to have somebody to almost read back, somebody you're comfortable with who can sit there and be like, yeah, you're talking too fast, or you're saying or those too many times, or whatever it is. Because it's interesting now, like we obviously work with a lot of freelancers and small business owners. And like I think a lot of creatives used to be able to like disappear into the background and be like, okay, I'm just the creative, like bring me out to show off my work, but I'm not going to be talking to the client. I'm just like, I'm down here in my basement in my hoodie. But now I think if you're a freelancer at any capacity, even if you are like a developer or anybody, you're going to have to be presenting at some point, and you're going to have to be talking, and you're going to have to be the account manager at some point. And the earlier you get comfortable presenting at some level and understanding how you talk and what nonverbal cues you're giving off, the better you're going to be. Because it's like, I've definitely seen people in their early careers fail at that point. And I was like, well, the client's like, well, they were giving off like, like they were angry vibes, or they thought I was an idiot. I'm like, no, they don't. They don't think you're an idiot. They have an accent, or they're just quirky, or I know that because I've known them for years, but you just met them. And so it's like so valuable to get that feedback early, because you can correct it. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, everybody hates me. I can't do this.
Yeah. Or they're just extremely uncomfortable in that situation, which I think a lot of creatives, or a lot of people in general who have never presented a lot to a client or to another person, especially if their work is being judged as part of that, there's a lot of insecurity that's going on there.
Yeah.
And they're projecting that insecurity back out, or they're trying to protect themselves by being in a little shell. And you can actually see people sort of fold their bodies in a lot of times when they're talking, or they're presenting, and their shoulders slump inwards and their hands get really tight. You can tell. And that's not necessarily that their work is bad. They're just not comfortable in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a vulnerability with sharing something like that.
Yeah.
If you're sharing your work and there's something you've put, lots of effort into, you are vulnerable for sure. But you'll note, as you said, collapsing, they're going towards the fetal position, and it weakens them, and it comes across as less confident in their own work, less confidence obviously in themselves as well. And it's definitely a case of embodied cognition. Fake it, fake the confidence. You may have to fake it for quite a while until you really arrive at a place where you stand, firmly in that position. But up, in, forwards, eye contact, some smiling, levity, where it's congruent. It all helps. But you're right, John. It's one of those where people, as their confidence goes, they just tend to get lower and lower and smaller and smaller, and they just roll in. The digits retract, and everything's just in.
Yep. And you can see them sort of slumping or retreating in the video and getting shorter and shorter in the space that they go along. And for those of you who are listening online, I just slumped way down in my chair. Yeah. So one of the tricks that we did when I was in college, the first time I ever recorded in a recording studio, and the first time you hear your voice back and the things that you were talking about, and it was just purely a voice. One of the tricks that audio engineers everywhere do is they will throw a little reverb on the person just in their headphones, so that when they're singing, it doesn't sound as sterile. And I'm wondering if there's maybe one of the things that you could do if you listen back to yourself, if you have the opportunity to throw on some reverb when you're listening to it back through whatever your editing equipment is or whatever, that might make you feel a little more comfortable about who you are, or how you sound, I should say. That was always a little trick that we did with singers, because they would get paranoid.
You should take Zoom calls in your bathroom, is what you're saying.
Yep. You could do that too. In your bathrobe, in the bathroom. That'd be a good way to...
Memorable. It's a good way to get remembered.
Yeah, if you're feeling
That's
uncomfortable,
actually a really good...
throw some reverb on.
Yeah. Something to camouflage it or change it up just a little.
Yeah,
and something that you did as you were slumping down, which is also worth mentioning. is when we sitting in an armchair, if you ever go to do like a panel, you're part of a panel of questions being fired at you, try not to rest your arms on the arms, especially if they're high up. Part of the problem is when we rest our arms up here, it actually recreates the same turtle position we tend to go into when we're dodging a threat or trying to avoid something threatening and making ourselves a smaller target. And again, it gets inside your own head. So if you have arms on the chair, I have them on mine. Another reason for sitting forward is to avoid ever using them and ending up in this scrunch position that then tells your subconscious, I'm not feeling confident. And thus, then we get into that loop. Well, maybe my work isn't good. And then obviously, we just spiral from there down.
Great. This has been good. Great so far. We're going to move on to the lightning round. We're the bar is low.
You've already got 2 hours left.
Go downhill now.
Bar is low, Terry. You know us well enough.
Yeah.
So lightning round time here. These are 3 quick questions. Try to limit your answers to 30 seconds or less. How's that?
Good Lord. All right.
I know this is going to be a hard one for you.
But you can have a few extra if it's like but I got a story.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can qualify it. We have the power to edit things. But yeah, so we'll see if we can condense it to 30 seconds or less. We'll test you on this. What makes the difference in a sincere and warm smile versus a creepy smile?
Oh, well, creepy or fake?
Or fake. Okay, that's fine too. But you get that creepy smile. There's
genuine smiles reflect in the eyes. We get what's known as those Duchenne lines, the crinkles to the sides of the eyes, the cheeks bunch up. We get a little bit of a horseshoe shape underneath the eyes. We also get a reduction in the sclera. We see less of the whites of the eyes for a genuine smile. The other thing that often goes hand in hand with a genuine smile is only the upper teeth are visible. We don't show the lower teeth unless that person is transitioning into or out of laughter. So if we really want to present a genuine smile, it's got to be from the eyes with the cheeks. And the last thing I'll add to that is timing. When somebody feels a genuine emotion, there's chemicals that are released inside the brain and the body that correlate to that emotion, and there's a shelf life. So if somebody is feeling a genuine smile, the smile will fade gently under its own steam. It doesn't just disappear. So if somebody has smiled at you and you're kind of decide, is it real or not? And then it just goes, probably fake.
Oh, that's a good one. That also made me think of, horror movies, and you have the scary guy that smiles, but the eyes are deadpan. And that's why it looks so scary, is the eyes are deadpan, and then they give you that crazy smile and then it goes away.
Yes. Sanpaku eyes, where we see lots of the whites of the eyes above or below the iris, usually above. Think Charles Manson. A big smile here with wide eyes is in contrast. They're in conflict. This is a manipulation, the lower part of the face, the smile with the teeth. The eyes are showing the genuine emotion, and wide eyes are usually indicative of an adrenaline dump, rage, fear. So it doesn't correlate to a smile, which is why it's unsettling.
Oh, that's good. Learn something new.
I always have a genuine smile.
You do. That's true. You do. I don't know if you can fake it.
Which is why I'm so approachable. I got to change it.
So you can look in the mirror and work on your creepy smile and see if that works. All right.
Do it.
So question number 2 here. Do you think there's still a gender gap in the amount of smiling you have to do to seem friendly?
I think there's maybe social obligation. We expect more smiling from women than from guys. I think we should balance the scales. We should get more smiling from men and potentially, depending on circumstances, less smiling from women, because it's a social appeasement. It has its roots in primates showing deference to somebody senior in their troop or their community. What we want to do is balance the scales. Guys should be smiling more and be more approachable. Women, in most cases, it should be a little less. Although that said, women who spend a lot of time in male environments do tend to smile less.
Oh.
Because they mirror what they're seeing, their feedback loop. So a lot of female police officers will not smile. And when they do, it can sometimes look a little awkward because they're not used to it. I met some female officers at a conference recently, and I smiled at them, and the two of them looked very suspicious. They're like, what's his game? Yes, no game. I smiled at the guys behind you and I smiled at the guys in front of you. You just happened to be there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was just,
I love
it was
that.
funny. It caught them off guard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So your surroundings are going to dictate sort of how you feel about smiling.
Yeah,
As-
very often.
Probably more than just straight gender roles. It's more about your surroundings and your learned behavior, maybe.
I think that makes
But
sense.
women tend to be more socially driven, right? They're more communicative.
Yeah.
They're more social in general. So sociability often comes under a facade of smiling and appeasement, which isn't to say, whether that's right or wrong. It's just a societal thing we should probably lean into depending on the work environment. And your goal is to smile slightly less. So if you're Mari and you don't want to be approached at every conference you go to, less smiling.
Or just don't go. Like,
Yeah, or just stay home.
I do feel like, now that I think about it, like when I'm in situations where there's a lot more like stoic behavior, whether it's like a super intellectual group or something like that, like I don't like to go to those situations because I don't feel like anyone's approachable. And I'm like, hey, I feel like you're just kind of like, nope.
Yeah,
So it's interesting because I tend to pull away from those situations by default.
but you're not getting any feedback. Like when we do smile at somebody, there's an expectation that will be reciprocated to one degree or another. When that doesn't happen, we are left feeling vulnerable because we offered up something as a connection, a way to bond or build rapport. And it's not kicking even back. We immediately think, well, I don't want to talk to you now. And that's something that's I think very important for leaders to acknowledge, that if a employee does smile at you, you should at least attempt to give some sort of reciprocal smile back. And it better be bloody genuine, because that person is going to know at an instinctive subconscious level whether it's real or not. And you will do more damage doing a fake smile than you will just staying, your usual cool, shut off, closed self. So you have to practice getting that smile to be as genuine as possible. I ran into this when I got out of the military for about 2 years. Everywhere we went, Carol's, badgering me. She's like, your face looks like you want to kill everybody. And I'm like, no, this is just my face out in public. But after a while, I started to really listen, as I should have done a long time ago. And I was like, oh, well, I'm kind of a bigger guy. I don't have to look like I'm going to kill everybody to be intimidating necessarily.
Yeah.
But outside of a military environment, I also don't have to look that way. So I started working on softening my face and being a little bit more giving, a little bit more smiley, and eventually arrived at what you see now, which for the most part, I think is pretty happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't imagine you the other way.
way.
Cannot imagine you the other way at all. That's wild. All right, last question. What's scarier for you? Giving a presentation in front of a room full of people, a big auditorium full of people, or making small talk with somebody that you just met?
Small talk with someone I just met, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I would much rather get up and talk and this is where the introvert in me shines. I can prepare for that presentation. I can do all my introspection and consideration and thinking through my teaching points. I can control that environment. You can't control small talk. You never know where it's going to go. There's no rehearsal. So as an introvert, ironically, it's harder for me to do small talk with a stranger than it is to get up and speak. But that's because I would practice my speech before I'd ever get up.
Yeah. And both are learned skills in different ways, I guess. Depends on
Yes.
when you do more.
Also, a lot of it comes down to, do I want to make small talk with a stranger?
Right.
Sometimes, yes, I do. I want to pass the time. What's going on? And sometimes I'm like, no, the last thing I want to do is make small talk. I got things going on in my head. Leave me alone.
Yep. Yeah.
Like most
I'm
people.
talking to my head right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing worse than, like, let's say being stuck on an airplane with somebody who wants to chat the whole time and you're like, no, I don't want to talk today. That's a hard one.
Very. That's why I take my big cans with me when I'm on a plane and make a big show of putting it on and shutting out the world.
Right. Right. And then if you want to talk, you can take them off and be friendly and say hi. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. The universal sign, big giant headphones. Please don't talk to me.
Sometimes it doesn't work though. Sometimes people won't stop people. They'll just keep coming anyway. I'd be like, excuse me, where are you from? I've had that happen to me before. And I'm like, I just start coughing when I sit down. They're going, it doesn't bother
Just okay.
I think one way to stop that from happening is to take a pause before responding to the question and
Mhm.
to take the animation out of your face. If someone asks you something, they say, "Where are you from?" Raleigh. It shows a complete lack of interest in that conversation. And it was
Yeah.
wars.
Right.
And often it's
It's
uncomfortable enough that they realize it's going to be a lot of work to get information out of you. So
Yeah.
change the cadence or the verbal latency with how quickly you answer. Let's say they sit down, "How are you today?" "I'm good. How are you doing?" "Great. Yep. Can't wait." Put your earphones on. They start asking you questions. You change the pause from the initial, "Hey, how are you?" because I'm friendly and I'm social and I want to be nice,
yeah.
to, "I'm going to take a moment with answering this one." Changes everything.
I know. Gosh, Terry, you're like two different people right there.
It does. Well, think about any middle schooler you know who just isn't having it on that day. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. They're so good at the pause, man.
They really are. And the expression in their eyes, and then they just turn and do something else and just completely act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So
From like a waterfall of information to like a one-word answer for
Yep.
everything.
Monosyllabic
Fine.
grunts. We're like, "Yep, this
Yeah.
conversation is dead."
Yes.
that's right.
That's good. I think it's good to think about too when you're in those situations. You brought this up before about how you can use your pause, and I know I tend to always like rush to answer sometimes, and because you want people to feel comfortable, right? It's like, I don't want you to feel comfortable because I don't necessarily know how to answer this. But it's really valuable to use pause both because then you don't, answer something you don't have any idea about, but then you can also collect yourself, slow things down, like take back over the conversation as opposed to always giving the conversation back to them. And I think that's like, that definitely, like learning how to pause takes a lot of practice. Like you have to really work on it and feel comfortable with the person you're practicing with.
Well, we fill the dead air with noise when we're uncomfortable. But people who are truly confident and are leaders, or perhaps are trying to become leaders, should embrace the pause. We do not fear being interrupted. We don't fear somebody else jumping in. If it happens, it happens. We roll with it. But most of the time, that pause plays very well in terms of showcasing your confidence in that silence.
Mhm.
Now, of course, if you pause for a bit too long, it gets uncomfortable, but that's what you reserve for when you're on flights with people that won't stop talking. Hold it
Use
for
sparingly.
Yes, use your power responsibly.
Oh, wow. Well, this has been a lot of fun once again. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us, Terry. I really appreciate it. I know Mari does too. Yeah, it's always entertaining to learn some new things and get some new knowledge from you. Before we leave, really quickly, can you just tell our audience a little bit about how to get in touch with you if they would like to reach out?
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on. It's always appreciated when I get called back. It doesn't happen very often, except to apologize. So if people are interested in having me come in to do training for them, whether it's personal safety or leadership, it's tvempowers.com.
Yeah, we'll always have you back as much as you want to come back. Maybe we'll just make
Yes.
this an annual thing sometime in November. A
Great.
little November
That
catch
would
up.
be great. I would appreciate that. It's always fun with you guys. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Terry.
mate. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that's all for today. Thanks so much to Terry Vaughan for coming and joining us on our podcast and answering some questions. It is always great to hear from Terry and to chat with him. Just to remind you, as our listeners, you can find Terry at tvempowers.com. And he's out there to help you or your business or your organization to really get better and more comfortable and more relaxed. And if you're interested in the dirt training, sometimes he does some dirt training in the Triangle area, and he is available to travel to companies and organizations to also do that training. Yeah. So until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Mari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.